I feel super connected to love. So connected to love. I think this experience has shown me you never know how much love is inside of you, like how much love you have to give.
All right, that was Katy Perry. If you're just listening to the audio, since I know most of you guys are just audio listeners, American pop music icon who once sued two 90-year-old nuns over a convent property, one of whom died literally during the court hearing for that. Talking about how connected to love she is after girl bossing it along with other women of the ruling elite for 11 minutes in space during a Blue Origin flight, Jeff Bezos' private space flight company. There's really a lot to unpack here. Welcome to Colonial Outcasts, the anti-imperialist podcast that your problematic uncle who disappears into the garage to sneak beers during Thanksgiving would absolutely hate. I'm your host, Greg Stoker. Co-host Mark Wayne is off on a series of esoteric side quests that I don't really know about, but we wish him the best doing whatever it is that he does now. So we've got a great episode for you. Going to be talking about the degrading status of the Earth's environment, white feminism and femme-washing. Might mention Gloria Steinem, the OG girl boss who was a CIA asset. Mass deportations of U.S. homegrowns to Salvadorian torture dungeons, and the ongoing campaign of mass death and ethnic cleansing in Palestine. You might be like, whoa, that's a lot of different subjects, but it's pretty much all one subject, interconnected, etc. And to that end, we have two great guests today. First is Michael, a Mezzatesta educator using social media to spread ideas for a better future. His videos on Instagram and TikTok present social issues like inequality and climate change, Blue Origin, through the lens of the political economy, and highlight why these problems are so difficult to solve in the context of a neoliberal, growth-based capitalist system. By presenting systemic causes and solutions, Michael encourages people to imagine better ways our society could work. Incidentally, he also has an economics degree from Stanford University. And second guest introducing Jalyssa Here, an independent journalist based in Florida. She covers Middle East conflicts and explores the influence of Western governments and media on these conflicts in the region. We've been chatting about having a regular contributor based in Florida because so much stupid shit happens in that state in terms of governance and the culture war that influences the rest of the country and the surrounding southern states that could be interesting in the future. Anyways, thank you both so much for coming on.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So, guys, we might get kicked off of YouTube forever soon. If that happens, I guess we'll start posting to Rumble. This is just a quick PSA. But if you do want to follow us on Patreon, all our episodes are free. So even if you don't want to pay for the exclusive content, if you want to follow us on there in case we get deplatformed, the episodes are free. Anyways, just had to do that real quick announcement. And guys, I love how much absolute blowback the Blue Origin Let Them Eat Cake 2025 Space Odyssey PR stunt has received. Michael, you mentioned the term femme-washing in one of your videos that you released yesterday. And I definitely want to get into that. And I also talked, Jalyssa's made a bunch of great notes on this subject, but I just want to contextualize everything for the audience about what Blue Origin is by reading its mission statement. Okay. And it's just straight up billionaire language. It's
I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah. Founded by Amazon's Jeff Bezos in 2000, Blue Origin is a private space company headquartered in Kent, Washington. According to its website, the organization aims to leverage space's resources to benefit Earth, as well as expand humanity's presence in space through increased transportation and the creation of living and working destinations in low Earth orbit. I assume once we're a polluted, irradiated hellscape, low orbit is going to be the place to be. Blue Origin says it's working to achieve these goals by building reusable rockets and engines to reduce the cost of space travel. to make space travel more accessible to civilians and drive sustainability. Quote, our vision is millions of people living and working in space, unquote, says Bezos. He said during a talk in the 2016 Pathfinder World Awards. We want to reduce the cost of getting into space, dramatically focusing on reusability. So I do like the idea of sustainability. Greenpeace just put out this social media video of the women floating in zero G. Katy Perry is revealing the set list of her upcoming tour, which I guess she floated or announced in space, with footage of climate disasters. So I'm just going to play this really quick, and it's a video Michael sent to me before this, and it's an excellent way to frame the next upcoming segment of this episode.
Our best things in life are free, but you can give them to the first and me.
Okay, yeah, and that's the thing I really want to focus on. Why I want to hear both of your takes on this. Why do you think Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin wanted to do this PR stunt now? I guess Michael, you can start.
All right. Yeah. First of all, Greg, thanks for having me on, and Jalyssa, good to be on here with you. Appreciate the opportunity to unpack this with you too. I feel inspired after hearing the Blue Origin mission. I don't know about you two, but I'm feeling like everything's going to be okay.
In low Earth orbit, we will,
Yeah. Asterisk, in low Earth orbit, everything's going to be okay. So why this trip? Well, what Bezos seems to be trying to do with Blue Origin, what a lot of these private space travel companies are trying to do, is frame private space exploration as a good thing for society, as something that we all want. I think it's a mirage. It's an attempt to get us to believe that we're all going to get to go to space, and it's something that's really good for everyone. When really what they're selling is super high-end luxury experiences for ultra rich people, and they're trying to sugarcoat it as much as they can to make it seem like something we all want. And I think that this latest fiasco of a trip is their attempt to take what is a cause they believe everyone cares about, which is women's rights and feminism and women's equality, and associate that with private space travel for ultra rich people. I'm very happy to see the blowback, because it's so out of touch. It's almost ridiculous. And I think that the way that everyday people are feeling now about the economy, about the cost of living, and about their interest in going to space and burning all of that fuel just to warm the planet and get 10 minutes of zero gravity is it's not really a demand that the market has, so to speak, to put it in terms Blue Origin might understand. So I think this is just an attempt to sugarcoat something that's really not something that normal people actually want, and using this kind of liberal veneer of extractive capitalism to basically convince the rest of us that this is a good idea.
That's a marketing stunt that blew back. What about you, Jalyssa? What struck you the most about this entire situation?
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks so much. I mean, I definitely agree with Michael. It was completely out of touch, just not of this earth, no pun intended. I mean, Katy, a lot of their commentary only furthers, what Michael said. Like, Katy Perry came back down to earth and said, I would recommend this experience to anyone. Who? We're not going to space. I'm not going to space. I don't know about you guys. I can't afford a $250,000 to $500,000 seat to space. This was a commercial for millionaires, billionaires, the oligarchs. Like, this is all that was. It was a PR stunt at best. I mean, the whole entire idea of Blue Origin, I think, is just a pet project, a pastime for Bezos. And it was just a really poor example in the name of performative feminism to allow this to pass. I mean, even when we look at the implications and what was derived from this entire mission, we didn't learn anything. They weren't investigating anything or conducting anything scientific. We nothing groundbreaking happened. I mean, we learned nothing. They went there with blowouts and their lashes on fleek and came back with a ton of love in their hearts. They were born again and recommend this experience to everyone. Nobody's having it. Your average woman is not inspired, is not empowered, at least those that, are awake to the reality of what's happening. So honestly, it was extremely tone deaf, out of touch with reality for sure.
Yeah. I would like to just start with, owning a 1-bedroom house first before we do space. Like,
Yeah.
or maybe
Walk before
healthcare.
you can run before you can.
I'm renting.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing, like the day that this stunt happened, the Texas government just shut down the idea for or the policy, state government subsidies for a high-speed railway between Dallas and Houston, Texas. And I was like, you know what? This reminds me of, I'm just going to bring this up real quick. It's kind of apropos to the situation. Northrop Grumman was just awarded $500 million to develop moon trains, but we can't even get a fucking train here. So yeah, if you want to go down a rabbit hole, look at Northrop Grumman to develop a concept for lunar railroad. Northrop Grumman, by the way, is a defense contractor. They produce the $1 billion B-2 nuclear capable stealth bombers that are currently staging out of Airbase Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. So, yep. So that's cool. We can't have real trains, but we can have moon trains.
And this reminds me of the fact that Blue Origin is partly federally funded. They receive government grants to run these space launches. I don't think that the government paid for this particular stunt, but this is a company that is owned by a billionaire who has built his career by growing one of the largest monopolies we've ever seen and stamping out any attempt of his workers to organize for their collective rights, avoiding paying taxes as much as he can. And now we, the actual taxpayers, are funding this private space tourism company for the ultra rich. It makes no sense. And I didn't know about this lunar railroad, but I'm definitely going down that rabbit hole.
Oh, you should definitely check it out. And the thing is, like, all of these private space companies are loosely affiliated with the Pentagon as well. Because,
of course,
there was it was a $13 billion package that was awarded this year between SpaceX, Blue Origin, and another company. And I want to say 2.4 billion of that was given to Blue Origin. So, yeah, I agree, Michael. Like, I don't know if it was this specific, endeavor that was sponsored by American taxpayers, but I mean, overall, the entire pet project is paid for by Americans because Bezos is not risking his own money. So it's just it's so sad.
Yeah. And because there's always enough money for bombs or these crazy billionaire-led adventure projects, vanity projects, but there's never enough money for, school lunches or basic public transportation for normal people. When those things come up, it's like, well, how are we going to pay for it? Well, maybe we shouldn't pay for the lunar railroad. I don't know. Maybe there's some reallocation of this budget or sending bombs to the IDF.
Yeah. But we have to wash it because these things are so completely inhuman and counter to like the basic material interests of the average human, non-billionaire human being. We have to wash it. If we look at like Israel and how they've managed to kind of like sanitize their apartheid and their own infiltration of our own democratic governmental system, it's through like pink washing, the whole like try being gay in Gaza. It's like, well, first of all, dude, like I'm interviewing a gay journalist in Gaza tomorrow, so just chill out with that. There's brown washing. They do a lot of art washing with like film festivals. Basically, this idea of washing something as progressive. I'm not as eloquent and articulate as either of you guys are, but could you explain after I play this video of Katy Perry, like literally yapping after the capsule, the module didn't do an ocean gate and landed safely on Earth. Talk about femme-washing, because I think that's what we're seeing here. So here I'm just going to play this clip. It's very painful. It will not make you smarter, but if I had to listen to it, so does everybody else on the podcast.
Can see the unity that we modeled and replicate that and understand that we weren't just taking up space, we were making space for the future.
I would just, okay, first of all, don't even try to unpack whatever the hell that means. This is one point I did want to make. The unity that we modeled, a bunch of people whose like lowest net worth was 300 million. So I grew up amongst like the liberal coastal elite in New England boarding schools. And guess what? Those people do have class consciousness and they don't fight culture wars. But you know, we're still struggling with that. So just wanted to point that out. So she actually did say something correct and true. I didn't think she understood what she was kind of tapping into there. But anyways, continuing.
And for me, like Gail said, this wasn't a ride, wasn't a destination. It was a journey, and it was a supernatural one. And my journey has always been about love and belonging. And I think that we have all felt that sometimes we weren't worthy or we didn't belong in certain ways, no matter all the accolades, no matter all the studying, no matter anything. And I think today we all said it, like, we belong here. Mm-hmm. This is where we belong, and we feel very sure of that. So I think that you'll never know the amount of love that you have inside of you.
That's enough of that. I kind of want to be generous and be like, was she like really stressed out on re-entry, so she had like 5 Xanaxes before she got on stage?
I was just gonna say, it sounds like, forgive me, they ripped a bong in space, or like ayahuasca in the sky and came back down. Like, why does she sound like this? We learned nothing from that on surface level. Nothing was gained, like nothing at all. The entire premise of this space flight was based on this superficiality and over exaggerated sense of self-importance. Like, the whole thing, I think, was surrounded like hyper individuality, which does not represent feminism, which is for the collective liberation and rights for women overall. It was about them. It was very selfish. I mean, even the messages that they were giving upon arrival back to Earth represented that. It was a lot about how they looked, a lot about how they felt love. I mean, like I said, like, nothing came from this, nothing was learned. They didn't take people that I think deserved, maybe besides Amanda Wen, who studied for this and prepared a very long time for this. And unfortunately, she was sexually assaulted, she was raped, and put her studies and her endeavors on pause to advocate for sexual harassment or sexual assault. And so I like, we'll just go ahead and cut her out of this, you know, for the sake of it. But nobody else there was anybody, I think, influential or made grave contributions to society, or has really paved the way for women in general. And I mean, we can get down the rabbit hole when we get there of, you know, selective feminism, how these women are also Zionists. They don't speak up for Palestinians, and they're here speaking about love and light and empowerment, but it does not span across, you know, for every woman. But that's what they're saying is, you know, we want to show women this collective unity and that you can do anything, but it's really not collective for them. It's quite selfish. It's this narrow lens that they have of this type of feminism that fits like their version of what it means that benefits them.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like the original suffragettes in the early 1900s, like also not being about anyone else's suffrage either. So,
yeah, and thank you, Jalyssa, for calling out Amanda Wen, because I do think that in the conversation around this, there is a very valid point of like, hey, leave her out of the criticism because she really deserved the spotlight, and I agree with that point. It is too bad that she's getting looped into that this is her flight to space, because there's so much kind of criticism, and I do think everyone's actually happy for her. But to get to your question, Greg, around why femwash this, and what is the point of using feminism to try and sugarcoat this type of thing? I mean, I think this is something that our version of liberal or neoliberal, whatever you want to call it, capitalism has gotten really good at, is taking social movements and assimilating the movement and basically removing all of the radical stuff and just keeping the kind of feel good, sugar coated, like, hey, we're making progress by making these incremental gains in diversity and things like that, while not like, what are we sugarcoating? Why does this need to be sugarcoated? It's because the actual system that is caused women's inequality is not under threat if it can say that it's funding something like an all-female trip to space. Oh, hey, it makes us believe, oh, right, if billionaires just spend their money in progressive ways, then we're all going to be okay, then we're going to solve these social issues. And that's the story that they're trying to ultimately spread, is that, hey, everything's fine, don't shake down the system, don't we don't need to fix inequality or any of these systemic problems that our society has, because we have these altruistic people at the top who are going to make these social concessions for us, and then all of these big problems are going to go away, when ultimately it's covering up the fact that someone like Bezos has accumulated more wealth than any individual should really be allowed to have, at the expense of the rest of society. And the reason that there's so many problems, just speaking of it from a US lens now, the reason we have so many problems like poverty, homelessness, and hunger, and all of these deep systemic issues that just haven't been really budged in the last several decades, is that all of the wealth is accumulating to a few people at the top, and there's no funding for social programs and things like that. So, and by the way, they're not paying taxes, right? So, it's helpful for them to take on whatever is the liberal trend, so that any form of radical politics gets kind of forgotten and left out of the conversation. And ultimately, the reason it's important for us to point a finger at the greenwashing or the pinkwashing or the femme-washing, whatever they're trying to do, is that it's all a distraction from the ultimate conversation we need to be having about how do we actually change the system so that we can get to the real solutions.
I I completely agree. To piggyback off that, this superficial, very egocentric feminism is very easy to sell because it's profitable. It doesn't challenge, imperialism, the empire, like you said. It's extremely palatable, I think, to women this day and age, and it's very easy to sell these billionaires. And it's easier. It's no longer about revolution, and it's no longer about fighting for change, but rather like this thin veil of self-empowerment that they're selling. And so it's a product, and it's very easy to sell, because they're like, hey, I'm pretty, and this is the brand that I'm promoting, and if I can do it, you can do it too. And like, for some reason, that's enough. And it kind of makes us forget, like you said, everything else that is incredibly wrong, and how women truly aren't liberated and don't have these freedoms, and we don't have the choice over our bodies, and the autonomy, and the agency, and healthcare, and resources for single mothers and minorities and things like that. And so if they don't want women to challenge the system, they don't want to enlighten women on how the system oppresses them, and so it's just much easier to sell this product that is performative feminism and femwash, something like this.
I mean, I get it too. Like, these are getting increasingly scary times. I am tempted to kind of like go on with the feel good story as well. And I just like to see how it's not working. I remember during the Met Gala last year in 2024, there was all these like influencers, and someone put like the Hunger Games music, like going to the Hanging Tree song, and everyone in the comments was like, hey, just calling in from District 9 or whatever. But this is even a bigger blowback. And I was just wondering, from an economic perspective, do you think it's tied to that? Like, we had, yes, inflation continues to be a massive concern, but like this insane market uncertainty, not just in the stock markets, but the bond markets as well, due to the whiplash tariff policy that Trump is like experimenting with. How do you see that informing what's going on right now?
I think it's super important context. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that this sort of capitalism with a liberal veneer, and these campaigns to pinkwash it or greenwash it or whatever you want, whatever they're trying to do in this marketing campaign, I think it kind of works when people are generally happy with the way things are and the state of the economy and the state of their families' lives and things like that. It doesn't work when people are struggling, because they're like, what the hell is going on? They're like, it's so tone deaf. And I think it's the reason it's so tone deaf is because the people behind this decision aren't struggling, right? And they're like, oh, everything is fine. Like I'm running like $3 billion companies and the government's helping me fund this. Like, I'm good. I have infinite cash. And I think Bezos is getting married like in Venice, probably buying out the whole city. I know there's a lot of Italians upset about that. But when things aren't going well, using this veil doesn't really work. People can see through the veil. And right now, regardless of what's happening in the stock market today, I haven't checked yet. It's morning here in Los Angeles, and I'm sure it's still swinging wildly. But the reason that Donald Trump won again a second election is that people are struggling economically, and the Harris campaign or the Biden administration, whoever you want to point fingers at, did not assure anyone that the economy was going to get better and that the cost of living was going to go down, because it all happened under their watch. And Trump came along and said, I'm going to fix this. Trust me, the strong man, right? Unfortunately, he hasn't fixed anything. He's just put a bunch of tariffs on our trade allies and caused the stock market to swing wildly. And so people, I think, are getting more upset because they voted for a guy who's really not delivering. And we can talk about all the reasons he never will deliver. But I think that ultimately, in a state of economic uncertainty and precarity, these liberal attempts to sugarcoat capitalism are very easy to see through. And I think that's why we're seeing so much blowback on the internet of this Blue Origin flight, because I don't think anyone was convinced that this was a good thing. And I think that's a sign of the times we're living in.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, but one frustrating thing I have is just like, people are starting to get pissed off at billionaires. I think there's starting to be this like kind of like mass like awareness of like what that really means for our society, for everyone's like standard of living and material conditions. I'm not seeing a lot of people, especially like liberals, and I'll just say across the political spectrum, like not connecting it to the capitalist system at all. Like, you could argue that other economic systems have their own problems, but like these are pretty unique. And what's interesting is that yesterday, the same day as the Blue Origin PR stunt, this Chinese influencer went incredibly viral talking about, the Chinese perspective on what's going on in America. And Kim Iverson, I've been on her show a couple times, definitely disagree with her vaccine policy, but some good stuff there, featured it.
Post from a Chinese national saying, you guys are all blaming China, you're blaming us, but it's really your own fault, and America now needs a revolution.
They rob you blind and you thank them for it. That's a tragedy. That's a scam. That's why I'm saying this right now. Americans, you don't need a tariff. You need a revolution. For decades, your government and oligarchs only ship your job to China. Not for diplomacy, not for peace, but to exploit cheap laborers. And in the process, they hollowed out your middle class, crushed your working class, and told you to be proud while they sold your future for profit. And yes, China made money, but we used it to build roads, lift millions out of poverty, fund healthcare, raise living standard. We reinvested in our people. My family also benefited from it. What did your oligarchs do? They bought yachts, private jets, and mansions with golf course driveways. They manipulate the market, dodge tax, and poured billions into endless wars. And you get stagnant wages.
It goes on for some time, but I can't really disagree with anything he's saying there. So I guess what I like to try to do, like in terms of like activism and discussing like what to do, we don't like to just like ruminate on how bad things are on the podcast. One thing I I generally try to preach is like intersectionality. So I'm a anti-war veteran. That's kind of like my shtick. And that's how I got on the Palestine cause and the prison industrial complex cause and stuff like that. So we definitely try to like connect the dots between all these things and how they're connected. And I guess, Jalyssa, just you first. I know you're coming out of Tampa, and it's a kind of a difficult political environment there. Do you see any shift in people, your family that you know over there in Florida?
Any shift with what over
Like
there?
political consciousness. I know that if we were outspoken against the war during the DNC and during the Harris campaign, a lot of people were like, "You guys are single issue voters," and I was just like, "How?"
In Florida, the thing with Florida is we are an overwhelmingly red state, and I don't think the political consciousness and transparency, these people here, I'll say, I told you before we hopped on, like the community is very small, anti-war and anti-intervention, pro-Palestinian, against occupation. It's a very, very small community here. A lot of people love DeSantis. They love Trump. And I just don't see a lot of people waking up personally. My family, they are Trump supporters. And what I'll say is, let me speak specifically to wars overseas in the Middle East. And it's not even because I come from a military family, but this is the sentiment that I come across from majority of people I know, people I've spoken to, extended family, things like that, is the media framing they buy into. They buy into the media framing. They buy into the propaganda. Nobody is driven to really research or do any personal work to dive into what the government is really up to. In my personal circle, and I'll just say for the state, hopefully I'm not generalizing, or exaggerating, but I've long said that as Americans in general, we have been bathing in this warm bath of denial, and we have yet to wake up to this cold shower of reality. And it's because we're not called to do so. It's very comfortable to look away. It's very comfortable to lie to ourselves. We haven't had a war on US soil, or, besides 9/11, or just a blown war in like almost a century nearly, maybe a little over. And so we know not what it is like to struggle. I think as far as, the tariffs, our economy, things like that, we've been dealing with this for so long that we're being breadcrumbed. And so honestly, any concession, any small win is a win for the American people. But I think overall in the United States, people are waking up to this. And that's why we're having these protests. We're having these, small revolutions, people speaking up, and the government doesn't like that, which is why you see them challenging and suppressing dissenting voices, and such.
I just wanted to make one point about the hands-off protest.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you guys showed up to your local one. I did, just for funsies.
Yeah.
It was at the Texas Capitol. I'm here in Austin, Texas, and compared to anti-war protests, there was zero cop presence. There was zero police. There was a couple plainclothes guys, but there were no fleet cars. There was no picket lines. It was very interesting to see.
Were there any like fights? How sometimes they send ordinary people in there to incite?
It was completely peaceful, and that kind of like got my warning sirens going. They didn't have any paid agitators like they did at the DC protest when Netanyahu came, and that guy sprinted like fucking like something Hamas or whatever. Like that dude, we saw him, we took pictures of him. He was a Fed. There was none of that going on at all.
Well, interesting. Why do you think it was? I
Well,
didn't see anything here in Tampa that was like that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's kind of like we can talk about controlled opposition, and like since the theme here is like feminism and individualized white feminism, we could talk about like Gloria Steinem, CIA operative. But no, I think it was just to get people like comfortably like, oh, the state is not actually as scary as it is. You showed up, you did something, you can go back home. Yes, and I tried not to be like pessimistic. As a dirty leftist, I tend to think that protesting is almost as useless as voting when it comes to affecting political change here in America. But I started off as like an East Coast liberal who believed in all that stuff. Used to read The Economist even in high school. So yeah, hopefully it starts to wake people up. But Michael, going back to you, you are on the West Coast.
Yeah.
We saw the massive failure of the Democratic Party over the last election cycle with the Harris campaign, and of course, no matter what you think of her as a candidate, she's pretty much doomed from the start. Now that like a lot of reporting's come out that like Biden was actually trying to sabotage her campaign and whatever. But it seems like the liberals in the country, not necessarily as a representative voting base, but the donor class, we could say, doesn't seem to have any reflection or to have learned anything. And I've seen you talk a lot about like the trap inherent to like neoliberalism in the capitalist system over there on the West Coast. You know, the bastion of some like democratic power centers. Do you think they'll ever, as a party, get away from that?
I think they will eventually, because they'll have to. And speaking of the recent rallies, I share your skepticism of the effectiveness of protest. So I saved my energy. I didn't go to the hands-off protest, but I did go to the Fighting Oligarchy tour for Bernie Sanders and AOC. Thought that was actually quite an interesting event. And I think that what I appreciate about that tour is the centering of the word oligarchy. And I think that it's an important word right now, because I think what the American public are realizing is that with the Democrats, we have a party that is very protective of corporate interests, and that being like the entire corporate class. And that's why we didn't see any kind of real radical policy. And I think that the California government is a great example of this, right? That's why we have Silicon Valley. That's why we're people always say it's one of the top 5 countries in the world in terms of GDP, if you count it as a country. Well, why do you think that is? It's because our government is very favorable towards corporations and technology entrepreneurs and all of that. But with the Republicans, I think people thought that they were voting for like a working class party this year. And what they're realizing is they were just voting for the party of oligarchy, which is actually different from corporatocracy, right? It's instead of just protecting the stability of the markets that Biden kind of represented, instead Trump is protecting a very small group of people who are loyal to him, and what they benefit from is not stability but chaos. And so we're seeing 2 competing versions of special interests running the country. And I think that it's a moment where people, I think, are starting to wake up to the fact that, you know, every year it's like we always blame the incumbent and we vote for the other option, and then the other option doesn't solve the problems, and then we blame them, we vote for we flip back. And it's just I hope with enough pattern recognition and with the cost of living I don't want it to go up anymore, but I know that it will, especially given the kind of writing on the wall with climate change, which we can talk about soon, because I do want to link that to the Blue Origin flights.
Absolutely.
But I think that ultimately what we're seeing is just a political system that is not actually representing the needs of the people. And I think that in terms of class consciousness, the one thing that stood out to me so far this year that does seem to be improving class consciousness is the action that Luigi Mangione took in the streets of New York City to take out the United Healthcare CEO.
Allegedly. I didn't see shit.
Allegedly. Yeah. If that was really him, right? They're pinning it on him.
Yeah. We're
not sure if it was actually him. We'll see what they find in court, right?
That wasn't him at McDonald's.
Yeah.
He would have never.
The reason I bring that up, though, is because I was very surprised when Ben Shapiro made a video about that and basically defended the healthcare CEO. And
he got ratioed in his own comment sections. It was
he got shredded by his audience, and this is a very conservative audience, right? And so I don't think that it's really a left versus right thing anymore in terms of like who's gonna defend the corporate class, who's gonna defend the oligarchs. It's actually just a top versus down issue of people like, you know, this Jeff Bezos and Ben Shapiro, who typically would consider themselves opposite side of the left-right spectrum. They're actually all part of the top. They're all part of this moneyed class that is actually running things. And the rest of us are looking at this and saying, hey, neither left nor right actually represents us. This is not really a left versus right problem. It's a top versus down problem. And I think that ultimately populist politics are going to become much more popular in the US in the next 10 years. And I think that Trump was able to seize that momentum a little earlier than anyone else and kind of say the right things, even though he didn't necessarily mean them.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up like the difference between like the corporate class and the oligarchs. You know, they like international stability to a certain extent. I thought, you know,
global trade,
you know, these trade deals take a long time to produce a return on investment. So constantly shifting geopolitical relations aren't good at all for that. And so they're starting to like fight back, but I don't know. In terms of, yeah, I guess I'm just concerned because, of course, classical fascism doesn't look like what we would call neo-fascism. But I was just concerned because, like, the liberal elite within Germany and within Italy, when the economic system started to collapse, they, you know, towed the line with the oligarchs who were like fusing themselves with government and corporate power. So hopefully, they come up with like a left. Like an actual progressive movement, but I'm not so sure that's entirely possible. So
maybe I'm being optimistic. I'm trying to speak it into existence. Maybe.
Yeah, to manifest.
Yeah, we're manifesting here.
Yeah, it's all about love. You know, we're a part of this earth, and if we can't be part of this earth, we'll just be part of low Earth orbit in the future. So I think that's like a good segue into like what I definitely wanted to focus on as well, and then do another callback to the whole feminism thing. But okay, climate change, environmental impacts. I know you're living in Florida, which is a like a climate hazard zone. I think like people are starting to like lose their insurance, like they cannot be get hurricane insurance anymore. Is that a thing?
I think what they did was some of these companies like cut off coverage, I want to say months before like the hurricane. So a lot of these families couldn't even protect themselves or insure their homes or change, you know, insurance companies. A lot of those coastal cities were absolutely wrecked through. I mean, you had people, and then I mean, you know, I'll get back on top, but then you had people moving up to the north, and then the hurricane went up to the north. Like that's insane. It went to Tennessee or excuse me, you know, through the Western Carolinas. So anyways, as far as Florida goes, insane flooding. A lot of those coastal communities were absolutely wrecked. And yeah, these insurance companies stopped allowing people to buy into their policies and premiums, I want to say months before the hurricane season came, because everybody knows in Florida, like it's something you prepare for every single year. You know that the hurricanes are coming. We get like 2 to 3 every single year. And this particular year, and I actually want to say like historically, these within the last couple of years, these companies are halting registration months before the hurricanes come.
The same thing happened in California with fire insurance this year before the big
I was about
fires
to
came
ask
through.
you.
Yeah, people got dropped, and then their houses got burned down a couple months later.
What was the whole ordeal with the water reservoirs? What, you know, I kept seeing like mixed, like they were full, and then they're like that one wasn't supposed to be full. Like what happened?
It's one of those classic kind of like conspiracy moments where there's some truth to it, and so it does actually have some validity, and that's why it spreads. There was one particular reservoir that was empty at the time of the fires in the Palisades, and the reason it was empty is because many months before they had found like a damage in the cover of the reservoir, and so they drained the reservoir to fix the cover. But then in typical kind of bureaucratic Californian fashion, there was like a bidding process for some contractor to fix it, and that bidding process took months and months, and it was still open when the fires hit. And so it was the reservoir was empty, and it really I think that the conservative attack dogs are right about this. It should have been full. That was a bureaucratic failure. That said, that's not why the fires caused so much damage. If that reservoir was full, sure, probably like, you know, a few more homes would have been saved, but it would not have prevented the mass destruction, because ultimately with the Palisades fire, I was here that night, and the wind was so intense that there was just no stopping that thing. It was truly like hurricane force winds meets incredibly dry conditions, and that's when crazy wildfires happen. And so both sides, quote unquote sides, are kind of right about the reservoir. But when it comes to insurance, the fire insurance policies have basically been rolled back significantly in California. You can't even buy fire insurance in certain zip codes, and if you can, it's incredibly expensive because the writing's on the wall. People know that these homes are in a fire zone. No one wants to insure that. And talk about climate change skepticism. I think look at what the insurance companies are doing if you want to know what's really happening. Those are not climate activists, right? Those are actuaries who are running like very mathematical risk-based analysis to see where it makes sense to invest their money, and they're seeing, a lot of hurricanes happening in Florida now, and there seem to be more of them every year. Oh wow, a lot of wildfires in California. So I think that some of the best evidence for the risk of climate change, if you don't want to trust the activists and you don't want to trust the scientists for whatever reason, because now climate scientists are considered political, look at what the insurance companies are doing.
I mean, that's a great point. Also, the whole water crisis, the conspiracy, the argument over like what happened with the water reservoirs in California, it did educate people on who the Resnicks were. The Zionist billionaires who use a ton of water for their almond and pistachio businesses, like kind of like the biggest supplier in the world, and they fund a lot of anti-Iran hawk war think tanks in Washington, D.C. that push for more hawkish policy towards Iran, more sanctions towards Iran, because who is their main pistachio competitor? Friggin' Iran. So yeah, it's all connected, man, and that's like what we like to bring up, and that's for me that's capitalism for you. So.
Absolutely. It is all connected. And I think an interesting question that I invite anyone listening to think about, especially as it pertains to climate change and the Blue Origin space flight, which is something I am very fascinated about the linkages between, is, just going back to the mission statement you read at the start. Blue Origin's mission is to, basically harness space to improve Earth. And it makes you think, why do we need space? Why do we need the materials up there? And ultimately, it's because we've consumed so much of the material that our Mother Earth has gifted us and made available to us, and we've created so much shit and products we don't need, and now we have huge islands of plastic floating in the ocean, where fresh water is becoming scarce. We have the oceans are warming and rising. Wildfires are getting worse, hurricanes are getting worse, et cetera, and it makes you think, okay, well, if they're looking at Earth as a big resource, which is the way that the global capitalist economic system has really used Earth for the last several hundred years since the industrial era, as an input to their massive growth machine, well, eventually they're going to need some materials that aren't on Earth, because they don't want this growth to slow down. And then they turn their eyes to space and they see, well, looks like there's some rare metals on Mars and on these asteroids, and we're going to need those if we're going to build these massive AI farms. And if we're going to continue this technological growth, we're going to need more materials. And so I think ultimately, the mission of colonizing space is really a attempt to keep the party going, quote unquote, for the billionaire tech oligarch class, because I think they do a lot of math too. They see the writing on the wall, and they realize that if they only rely on Earth and the materials and labor here, they're not going to be able to continue their quest for whatever the heck their quest is. I guess universal dominion and colonization of everything that they can see. So I think that ultimately it's an attempt to ignore the climate crisis and the resource constraints of our planet by going elsewhere.
Mhm.
Did you see, Michael, that Gayle King said, you guys don't understand what we're doing here. That Blue Origin wants to take the waste from Earth and take it to space to make Earth a better place. Did you see that she said
Wow,
that?
that would be so nice if they took our waste to space. I don't, I did not see
Look,
that.
We want to
That's
pollute space.
look. I mean, I wasn't a logistics guy when I was in the military, but shooting trash up into space through massive rocket boosters doesn't seem efficient or good for the environment. It's
She
just
said it with such, like, she was so proud of it.
confident.
You don't understand. We polluted Earth. We're gonna pollute space. Don't you get it? And I'm like, these people are so just not from here. They don't understand. This is insane.
That's wild.
Yeah,
I did not
but
hear that.
again, yeah, to have a massive party in space, as you said, and that's why they had Katy Perry, just like they had Lady Gaga at the DNC. Not good at winning, but they sure know how to party. Yeah,
And
I
it's
don't know.
it's not just space. I mean, they're trying to become cyborgs, really,
Yeah,
right? Like
Peter
that's
Thiel is on that transhumanist stuff.
1,000%. They want to harness the power of AI, put it into their brains, and basically become superhumans. And I think I don't think the plan is for all of us to become superhumans. I think the plan is for them to become superhumans, and we are the toiling masses working in mines on Mars to, pull up whatever metals they need to continue their quest. That's what I think is at the bottom of all of this Blue Origin tech bro kind of ideology, and it's helpful, I think, to connect these dots, just so people see what is the vision that they're offering and realize that, oh no, I don't really want that, even though they've made it seem like it's like a women's rights thing. No, it's not about women's rights at all. They're just trying to use whatever is the trendy social cause to sugarcoat what is effectively a new form of imperialism by the ultra rich.
Right. And them becoming like the transhuman tech overlords. As much as I hate Steve Bannon, he does a good job of like talking about this. I mean, just put to the side that he says they have 5 or 6 ways to get Trump a third term. He does focus a lot on this and about like Peter Thiel and like Alex Karp and all these other billionaires who are on this stuff. Elon Musk is like kind of like the clown billionaire. He's like the richest guy right now. But he also like needs to be like loved and worshipped in a way that these other guys don't. And yeah, he's like the most harmless of all of them, in my opinion. But anyways, I just want to put out this point. It's like these guys read, it seems like because they're nerds, they read these like cyberpunk dystopian books.
Yes.
And they're like, instead of being like the anti-government, corporatocracy shadow runners, I'm going to be the corpos. It's kind of crazy because that's what they took away from that entire like social commentary sci-fi setting.
Yeah, we're living in a billionaire's fantasy. Some guy who read a couple of sci-fi novels and decided to like steer humanity in a direction that they think is cool and fun, and where that is the world we're living in now. And I do think that Steve Bannon, despite his flaws, is ultimately a populist and someone who does care about working people. I don't agree with the tactics at all in terms of how we deliver for them, but I do think that he has some important and helpful critique of this ultra rich class that's trying to hijack the MAGA movement, which he would very much like to keep his hands on the steering wheel for.
Yeah. So I guess my next question, last question, would be for you, Jalyssa. Like, how transparent do you think this PR stunt was to people, to women, to like young girls who want to be inspired by like women going into outer space, but like these aren't astronauts? And I think I read somewhere that there was supposed to be an all-female astronaut crew for like a 2026 or 2028 mission, and that kind of sucks for them. But
Yeah.
like, how bad do you think this backfired with regards to that?
It backfired tenfold. This was the worst publicity stunt I've ever seen this week, because you know what? It's shocking, but that shock can be renewed weekly. And we're going to something will happen next week that I'm sure will match this. I mean, it's pretty bad, because my thing is if you want to inspire young women to go to space, why don't you take your billions and millions of dollars, and why don't we take taxpayer dollars and maybe put it towards programs, or put it towards funding teachers so they can teach children in school? Why don't we put it towards after school programs? Why don't we put it towards, like educators? Why don't we do that? Why are you sending useless Katy Perry to space? Don't really care for Gayle King. Doesn't really matter if I do or don't. Nothing constructive. I'm serious. The only person I'm really defending here is Amanda Wen. Deserves it. Like, but why are we, Lauren Sanchez? Let me say this. Lauren Sanchez is there because of Jeff Bezos. Okay. The other three or four, Bo could be debatable because she's a NASA engineer. The other 3 or 4 are there because of social and financial clout and proximity to Lauren Sanchez. None of these women worked for this. There's absolutely no correlation in their relationship to why they should be in space. This is actually an embarrassment to women, to actual astronauts. I mean, let's even look at the space flight. I can't recall the specific names of the astronauts or the specific space flight that had their mission extended by 9 months and couldn't even come home because there was technical difficulties and they couldn't even send like a rescue crew out there for like ever. But we're sending these like 6 baddies into space to take selfies, promote their tours, show us stuffed animals, to look at the moon and then come back. $28 million, $2.4 billion of taxpayer money. They came back. They even sexualized it, which I abhor. I really, really, it's disgusting, that part of mainstream feminism, that we believe liberation is the over-sexualization of women. And I mean that in the truest sense. It's not about like, I should be able to wear this, this isn't that at all. They took something that could have been impactful. They made it about what they looked like, and they made it about this like self-absorbed personal projection message for themselves, right? Like Amanda Wen had a genuine message. Gayle King was like this spokesperson and mouthpiece for Blue Origin, sending the shit we have on Earth into space. Lauren Sanchez, nothing came of that. Katy Perry, she was born again in 11 minutes and she's promoting her tour. So absolutely nothing came of this. It's really sad because these billionaires love white feminism. And the thing is these women, right? While the crew was diverse, that message did not span across to Black women, to Asian women, to women in Palestine, in Gaza, in Gaza, in Sudan, in the Congo. It did not span across. Nothing came from this. There were no, heavy contributions.
Yeah.
We play into, it plays into like for instance, war, which is, the result of, imperialism and capitalism. Women become a byproduct of that in becoming sex slaves and becoming, subjected to violence and sexual harassment. And so like, they don't speak up for these things. It was just like a big financial gimmick. It was fun money. And it was just, it was a big sham.
Yeah, I will say that they weren't that diverse in terms, if you just do a class-based analysis. I'm so sorry, Michael. I know you had a heart out like 2 minutes ago.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to wrap up or plug anything before you head out.
No, it's all good. I just want to pile on to what Jalyssa just said and mention that, this, if you look at it from the lens of top versus down, top versus bottom, from a class angle, it's very clear that there's no diversity in the space crew, right? It's a crew full of wealthy celebrities, and again, a couple of notable exceptions and some unfortunate, kind of like murkiness that's going on there, but ultimately it's a trip for rich people, and ultimately what Blue Origin's selling is trips to rich people. So let's not forget that, and remember what this is a marketing stunt for. And I'm glad that, we were able to unpack some of the ideology behind it and where this is all going. So no, nothing to plug really. I think ultimately I hope that folks use this as a chance to kind of see the importance of class consciousness in unpacking some of these issues. And I'm very, very happy and grateful that I got to have this conversation with you, Greg and Jalyssa. Thanks for having me on. And if you've got any final question for me, Greg, I'm happy to stick around a couple more minutes, but I do need to jump soon.
Oh, no, it's just I guess like, I don't know, like a call to action to like the activists that watch this channel.
Yeah, I will say, look, and if y'all are going to keep going, I imagine you'll probably get into some of the extrajudicial and very alarming moves by the Trump administration to ship people to El Salvador into a maximum security prison. I think that this is ringing a bell for me of like an Abu Ghraib era of when we used to have these, prisons.
Extraordinary renditions.
Exactly, extraordinary renditions. Prisons outside of the jurisdiction of our country that were really kind of just dead zones for human rights and for journalistic oversight, or for any sort of even veneer of like human rights and liberalism mattering, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that as someone who is a climate activist and someone who's speaking up on these issues, it's very scary because I know that the pro-Palestine activists are first, and the illegal, quote unquote, illegal immigrants, if you believe that's a real thing, are first at the top of that list. But the direction this is heading is those are just the first dominoes to fall, right? Yeah. Climate activists are next, and then it's going to be women's rights activists and trans activists, and then it's going to be list off social causes that the Trump administration doesn't like. So I think that in the face of this very scary shift, I think it's tempting to de-risk everything and say, I'm not going to talk about those issues anymore because I don't want to get shipped to El Salvador. But it's also important to note that that's exactly what the Trump administration is trying to, that's their goal, is to get people to stop speaking up. And so I think it's really important for us to actually collectively make a stand and continue talking about these issues. And of course, for people like me who are white men who have relatively privileged backgrounds, to be a little bit louder, because privilege is something that we all need to lean on in these situations, and it's not a reason to step back, but it is, the stakes just went way up. And I hope that whatever legal recourse there is to stop these extrajudicial shipments of what seems to be a direction is U.S. citizens are going to start being shipped to this prison. It's alarm bells are ringing loudly, and so I just wanted to mention that because in light of all of the stuff we talked about, which is actually, I think, interesting from an intellectual perspective, there's like a very, very real threat that just became extra real this week. So not to leave on a super down note, but I just wanted to mention that because look, the stakes are high.
They're very high, and they're definitely coming for your climate activist ass. During the 90s, it's like when they really started to flesh out the term like domestic terrorism. It's when climate activists were doing direct action against corporations. So y'all are gonna go because at the same time the Stop Cop City folks are too. So we're gonna look forward to that. I don't think we'll go to El Salvador. I think we'll go to Guantanamo Bay because they're reopening that and expanding it. So it's way less. It's way more hush hush. So that's a fun thing to look forward to. What did I just want to add? I think I lost my train of thought just thinking about all that fun stuff. But yeah, intersectionality.
Sorry about that. I threw a lot at you there, and I need to jump. But such a pleasure talking to you both.
I will link Michael's socials in the description. Y'all follow him. He comes up with a lot of great content. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks. Ciao.
Okay. How much time do you have?
I'm wide open.
Okay. I did want to talk about this fucking prison situation.
I have to piggyback off of what he said. I completely agree that. So I had posted about it and I was like, this is a violation of a couple of international humanitarian laws, as well as violations of the Constitution. And I had some people try to justify it saying like, well, Donald Trump said that it was for, violent criminals, repeat offenders. And I'm like, listen,
90% don't have criminal records.
Exactly. And my thing also is, whether they have a criminal record or not, these are American citizens. It actually doesn't even matter if you killed your dog or my mom or you robbed a candy store. These are American citizens. And this is also the gateway to, like you said, climate activists, like student protesters, dissenting voices, peaceful protesters. If we're starting off this way, Donald Trump will not hesitate to take nonviolent crimes or criminals and lock them away or try to deport them. He's already doing it right now by, relinquishing education status, trying to revoke citizenship and things like that. And so it's really the gateway, and it is dangerous, and the alarm bells are going off. But for some reason, people are only pulling this apart and analyzing this on the most surface level way possible. And my thing also is, let's think about the people in the United States that are missentenced, falsely charged all the time. I mean, if they get put out, I'm just hypothetically speaking here, like, we're never seeing those people again. We shouldn't. Why are we offshoring punishment and detainment? But this is terrible. Is a terrible idea.
Well, this is how you do it, because it's easier to take people away from the law than it is to take the law away from people. So it's harder to deprive them of rights within the country to kind of discredit your entire legal system, which you depend on for your own political power. So you just take them away to where the law doesn't apply.
Yeah,
Guantanamo
absolutely.
Bay.
Gitmo.
Gitmo.
And what's her name? Naomi. She's like sitting there like with her like AK, and she's like, guys, this is where you come when you're a bad boy to America. And I'm like, why are you cosplaying like ICE Border Patrol agent right now? This is ridiculous. Like, it's so dystopian and out of touch. It's like actually disgusting. And they're very proud of this. And it's really sad to see.
Well, there are two things going on. So like the fascists kind of like in power are using deportation laws to do an ideological purge currently focused on universities, right? It's an outrageous and illegal debacle, right? But people are missing context, so their opposition is framed too narrowly. They're purging ideology through the universities, and they're actually setting up a deportation pipeline through the El Salvadorian prison, and eventually they're going to merge.
That's fun.
I know. So they're using both the Palestine and illegal immigrant thing to create a system that punishes both ideology and extraordinary rendition.
And they're starting in the universities.
They always start in the universities.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's where the most left-wing people are. If we remember that poem from the Second World War, hang on 1 second. Where fucking was it? At first it was by the German Lutheran pastor Niemöller. He said at first they came for the communists, but I did not speak out because I wasn't a communist. And they came for the socialists, and they came for the trade unionists. Then they came for the Jews, and finally they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. So I mean, this is the same thing. But the thing that's so instructive about that poem / speech by that pastor in the 1930s was he was actually like a right-wing fascist Nazi supporter, anti-Semitic, but he was imprisoned eventually because he spoke out against the state control of churches when they started to control churches within the state of Germany. And it's instructive just because it's like, it comes for you too, to any political dissent. It's coming for your ass. So time to get together now.
Don't ever think it can't happen to you. And Donald Trump he's so honest about it. He just told us like 3 days ago when he was with the president of El Salvador. The homegrowns. The homegrowns? That's us. Like, what do you mean? People aren't like.
Well, he was asked about U.S. citizens and their protected status, and he said, "What do you think? They're a special category of person?"
And he was like, "Do you have room? You're gonna have to make more room for like the American citizens."
You have to build 5 more. He said 5 more.
And and the president of El Salvador is so pompous. He was like, "Send them." I'm like, "You're one sick FUCKER. Like, you are sick." He was just so happy about it. He's like, "Yeah, send them. No big deal."
Hey! Don't talk about the world's self-proclaimed coolest dictator like that.
He's such a chill guy. He came in a suit, all black, very stealth. It's gross. So, but it's really scary because I don't know why. Like really, really, I mean, I'll say it again. I've like posted about it, like this warm bath of denial. And we really need to wake up to the cold shower of reality. A lot of people, we're just too comfortable here. What do you think? Like we're just too comfortable. We experience like oppression at the level of like cost of living and living conditions and, you know, social and economic oppression, but like in terms of
We are so heavily propagandized that we think this is normal. Like I lived in Greece, I've lived in India, and yes, there's massive poverty and huge problems with the government, but like, dude, an X-ray when I broke my ribs, like fracture when I broke my ribs playing rugby, uh, like you don't need healthcare there because even if you're poor, you can still get X-rays.
yeah,
Like it's like $5. Like at like a nice, like completely modern Catholic hospital in Mumbai.
yeah,
Uh, and also like they're not as isolated. So yeah, you know,
mhm,
they might not be able to buy a house, but their house has been in their family for generations. So like we don't have
right.
that.
No.
So there's just, but we think like we're the most liberal and free and individualistic. Well, it's also why we have like some of the highest depression rates, like outside of the Nordic countries.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, it's that and so heavily propagandized as well. So 1 second.
Yeah.
I just wanted there was a great post by Traumatized Thriving. It's an account. I'll try and link it, but they come up with some bangers of posts. I'm just going to read something. Fascism needs your compliance. It will let you scream just enough to avoid a fight, i.e. controlled opposition. While we're busy raising awareness, they're passing surveillance laws, banning books, and militarizing the streets. This is not passive, it's their strategy. Look
Mhm.
around. Public safety used to outlaw protest. Palestine solidarity labeled terrorism. Anti-trans bills cloaked as community protection. Tech tracking marginalized people. None of this is new, but it's accelerating. So this is the call to action. Like I've been super depressed over the past week and a half. Like not
Mhm.
doing super well. Like, but because like I was thinking about this, this is psychological warfare. You know, traumatized people are much easier to control. This is why when you are burnout, scared, and overloaded, you will settle for survival instead of
Mhm.
liberation. This is why
Mhm.
regulating your nervous system isn't self-care. It's more like resistance training. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So just there are different ways to do this. I might do a whole episode on that with a psychologist, like a revolutionary psychologist. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to point that out there. Like this is literally, you brought it up earlier. Like this is meant to scare us. Like this is literally psychological warfare.
It is,
So
and we're so busy, like you said, trying to survive that it makes it impossible to do anything more than that, to try and rise above and like catch air above, you know, the water. Like we're drowning, and they keep it right there. They let us think that we're doing enough or we're doing social, you know, we're making effective social change, but you know, they keep us at bay, and they're really smart, and we're being breadcrumbed because we're tired, and so sometimes it's just enough to get by. And I think it makes the entire process of revolution that much more difficult. Um, so yeah.
yeah. So oh boy. Well, you know, guys, we're all in it together though. So just yeah, keep
Honestly, I think if we just band together with collective unity and feel the love, like we can probably get through this together.
yeah. And you know, we might not even need to go to space to do it.
No, we can do it right here on Earth. I'll kiss the ground right now, just like Katie.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we covered some topics. We covered you know, capitalism in general, femme-washing, white feminism, specifically the ones that serve the billionaire class.
Yeah.
Talked about climate change, climate activism, the
Yeah.
prisons, touched on Palestine, although
Yeah.
we're going to be getting into that more. Tomorrow I'm going to be interviewing a ex-CIA whistleblower about, yeah, Israel Palestine thing. He's very
Nice.
outspoken about at least Israel. So that should
Yeah.
be fun. And yeah, that's I guess that's where we're going to leave it. But we will continue reporting as the Earth burns. And
Of course. And as
before,
they float in space.
Yeah, you know, where all the transhuman overlords can live in low Earth orbit while the entire planet becomes an irradiated dust bowl. So that's fun. But anyways, this has been Colonial Outcast. I will also put Jalyssa's socials in the description. She is an independent journalist coming from Tampa, Florida, and yeah, Instagram and X. And anywhere else?
No.
No, that's just it for now.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. This has been, I don't know what I'm going to call it. Like maybe Let Them Eat Cake 2025 Space Odyssey, something, Oligarchy.
I like that.
Yeah. So, yeah. I'll figure it out. I'll workshop it. So, anyways, thank you so much for coming on, and we will see you tomorrow. Cheers, y'all.